Hi everyone, thanks for joining me for what turned out to be part 3 of this video, where in a January 1987 issue of Omni Magazine, they asked a bunch of people what life would be like 20 years in the future. And it's been really fun going through the responses and discussing the predictions that some people made. Some of it was great, very accurate. Some could have used a bit of work. But anyway, here's part 3.
What the hey? Let's do some more future.
And so next up is Robert Heilbronner, I believe that's how it is, from the Norman Thomas School of Economics, something like that. So, okay, economic professor. So let's see what he thinks the economy is going to be like in 2007. There is an alarming possibility that our economy is moving in the direction of what some people call a two-tier society. A large population of people with middle class or higher incomes and values, with a considerable bulge at the top, and a large number of people who have been economically and culturally uncoupled from the main society. I would say these days people would still argue that that's still happening. In fact, more so, there's now even bigger concerns with thanks to the economic crises, 2008, due to the pandemic, how the poorer segments of the population seem to be suffering. Rich get richer, poor getting poorer. This is why in America there's this fight for minimum wage increases and things like that. So yeah, I think that trend definitely did continue. In the next 20 years, the government will have to take active steps in providing work and income for the bottom 1/3 of the population. That seems to always be a concern of governments for the most part. So yes, and that currently is now, especially with the pandemic, but that's not really a bold prediction. I guess unless he's thinking that in the past they really haven't been that concerned with it, in which case I'm not sure how he would feel about how things progressed in America, because this is from America, how things progressed in America in the next 20 years. I know unemployment rates went up and down, but they got quite good post financial crisis. But has it hit? Is this really a solid prediction? Not really. It is clear which countries are emerging as economic powers. It is entirely possible that Japan is going to be the England of the future. Okay, England. Well, I guess, the British Empire sort of thing. Japan may combine its leadership and technology with the inexpensive manpower and the intelligence of the Chinese, the Malaysians, the Taiwanese, the Indians, the Koreans. It is quite possible that there will be a new world economic empire out there, which will severely challenge the formerly undisputed hegemony of the West. Yes, but it was not Japan. Now, in the 80s, this is when Japan's economy was booming, and suddenly everyone was all kind of interested in, what's Japan doing? How did Japan get this way? They were starting to follow Japanese business ethics and see if that would work. So in the back of everyone's mind, Japan was becoming the new economic power. And it wasn't until a bit later in the early 90s that Japan's economy went into a recession. And it actually turned out to be China that has now grown to become the true economic superpower and is probably number 2 or number 3 in the world. So the prediction, yes, he just got the country wrong. Not blaming him, because he was expecting Japan would continue its trend and become the economic power. In truth, it was China, but he did mention basically East Asia was where this is going to happen. So he called that one right. The Soviet Union, as far as I can see, will continue to be very bureaucratic and will be very unlikely to make any economic changes. Oh, okay. This is our first prediction that mentioned the Soviet Union. Wow, I kind of forgot. This was during the Cold War, this article, because these people would have been interviewed in late 86, early 87, and the Soviet Union still existed. Of course, he doesn't seem to realize that the Soviet Union broke up just, I think, 4 or 5 years later. He was correct in that it was very bureaucratic. I think economic conditions was one of the main drivers for the breakup of the Soviet Union, but Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore, so he missed the mark a bit on that. Sooner or later, this terrific debt problem has to be resolved, and there is only one possible way to resolve it, and that is to forget it. Oh, okay. I suspect that under international agreements, the old debts are going to be washed away, forgiven, or rephased. What? No, this did not happen. Debt in countries is still a massive issue. And with the pandemic, it's going to get worse. I think they're just getting ready to pass a $1.9 trillion aid bill in America. EU has racked up tons of debt. Canada, you name it, they're all racked up tons of debt. The idea of debt forgiveness is going to be a tricky one. When you think about post-financial crisis around 2009, 2010, and you had this issue with Greece, and Greece trying to figure a way out of its debt problem. And I mean, that Greece was not a huge part of the world economy. It's not that big of a country. And yet, trying to restructure its debt became a real issue. And the EU was helping it out, but under conditions and all sorts of other stuff. So for a major economy like the US to just, oh, well, I guess, the debt will just get canceled, the ramifications of that would be traumatic. Like, it would completely probably tank the world's economy. So, nice idea. I don't know if that's going to be happening. Hopefully the US doesn't get such in debt that it can no longer meet the payments, but I don't think that's going to be happening any point soon. That's kind of it for his major predictions. Okay, they were all right. He got the East Asia thing. Did not figure out the Soviet Union is going to break up, but he was an economist. And debt forgiveness, yeah, pretty off. So I'll give this a 4 out of 10. Sorry, what was this gentleman's name? So I'll give Mr. Hailbroner a 4 out of 10. Didn't really hit many of the marks. All right. So who's up next? Up next is George Will, author, columnist, and commentator for ABC News. Okay, probably going to talk about communications and news. There's a lot of talk these days about whether or not the Soviets can stay in the race with us technologically. Clearly, they will be a major superpower, but in the next 20 years, the gap between the United States and the Soviet Union is going to widen again in terms of science, culture, technology, and military strength. Okay, once again, another prediction that the Soviet Union will continue on. He, of course, is wrong. The Soviet Union broke up 4 to 5 years later. I mean, okay, you could maybe apply some of this to Russia as opposed to the Soviet Union. And yes, when the fall of the Soviet Union happened, we kind of got a lot more insight into what was going on during the Cold War. And yeah, the Soviet Union was just falling way behind economically, technologically, you name it. So he was correct, except for the fact that the Soviet Union wouldn't exist anymore. I think we have a real chance of seeing peace in the Middle East. No. I wish, but no. Radical Arab position will be so obvious in 20 years that even radical Arabs will have noticed. What? Okay. I guess he's saying that radical Arab positions, whatever that is going to fall by the wayside. And wow, is he wrong? Yeah. Wow. You thought things were radical back in 87? Well, yeah, he didn't even know about the Taliban. Oh, sorry. Taliban aren't Arab. But you got Daesh and Al-Qaeda and all these guys and the 9/11 attacks and everything. So no, in terms of radicalism, 2011 Arab Spring revolts. So yeah, no, in terms of radicalism, it got worse. and hence probably a part of the reason why there's no peace still in the Middle East. Also, I simply do not despair of the possibility of a peaceful evolution of a generally pluralist society in South Africa. Okay, well, hopes came true. I think he's definitely referring to the fall of the apartheid regime in South Africa. That did occur, and it is now a democratic, pluralist society. Anyway, yes, apartheid fell, so called that one right. Yeah, and that was it for his major points. So basically, issues with the Soviet Union, peace in the Middle East, South Africa. So get about 1.5 out of 3. Definitely got South Africa. Way missed the mark about the Arab world, and Soviet Union, partially. So I guess Mr. will just give him a 5 out of 10. Just put him right down on the middle there. Good call on South Africa. All right. Next up is Andrew Greeley, priest and professor of sociology at the University of Arizona. Oh, okay, a priest. So probably going to talk about religion. Women will remake religion, both its institutions and theology. This will improve the church because it has been deprived of the emotional concern and the tenderness that women performing at their best bring to any environment. He's a priest, right? Okay, he's a priest, so I assume he's Catholic. No. I'm not entirely sure what he's envisioning here, but I don't think so. No, I don't think that suddenly women are playing a much bigger role in organized religions, especially the Catholic Church. So no, that didn't happen. The emphasis on teaching religion through story is going to increase. This will be part of the feminization factor. Formal storytellers, novelists, screenplay writers, parents, and teachers will develop their storytelling talents in order to pass on religion? Okay, I'm not deep into the, theology and stuff. I don't think so. I mean, now you could say with social media and all that, these are ways to, help spread religious teachings and so forth, but I don't think that's what he was getting at. I'm not sure how the storytelling feminization thing fits in. So I'm gonna give that a no, ease off on this. The so-called conflict between science and religion will continue to abate and vanish 20 years from now. Yeah, you weren't counting on just how radical evangelical Christians can be. Yeah, this did not happen. Anti-science thought, anti-evolution, controlling books and things like that. No, this is still going on. Maybe not in the Catholic Church. I can't speak for that. But no, this is still definitely going on. Within my own tradition, the power of the Pope definitely will shrink. Today we are experiencing the last gasp of a dying or dead, and in 20 years most of it will be gone. There will be a new leadership more interested in listening to what the people and what the local bishops say. Oh, okay. Okay, I'm not Catholic, so I'm not quite sure what to say about that. There's only been 2 major popes in the last 20 years, Pope Benedict and now Pope Francis. I think Pope Francis is supposed to be a little more liberal, a little more, left-wing, and maybe this would fit the bill for him, but I don't think Pope Benedict was. So this idea that there'd be this huge change in the Catholic Church, and again, maybe relating also to this feminization of it and so forth, I don't really think that happened. And while I believe Pope Francis is definitely very different from some of his predecessors, I don't think this is fitting the bill. Okay, so that's sort of the major points from Mr. Greeley, or Father Greeley, I guess, he's a priest. Don't think any of this really happened. Now, okay, I can't say for sure, I'm not Catholic, but No, I think this is again just kind of projecting what he wants to see rather than what, like taking actual analysis of the trend and trying to make it an accurate prediction. This is more projecting what he wants. So I'll probably give this probably about a 3 out of 10. Don't think it really hit the mark, I'm afraid. Okay, finally, we have Barbara Ehrenreich. Ehrenreich? Sorry, I don't know how this last name is pronounced. An author and columnist. And I believe a sociologist or a sex researcher, because I've just seen the first sentence and sex is the first word. So let's see here. Sex will continue to be on center stage in the next 20 years. Bold prediction. Yes. I think anyone could have called that. So yes, it is. All right. For many years, we had birth control, but the realization that sex can be something that is not connected to some other purpose in life is just gaining hold. People are understanding their own particular sexual needs for the first time. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that's sort of how it was in the late 80s. I thought that there was a whole revolution around sexuality kind of in the 60s and 70s, but okay, clearly not. We will continue to move away from a medical model of sexuality which separates sexual activity into normal patterns over here and the dysfunctions or the illnesses over there. As we develop a broader definition of sexuality, it will appear particularly quaint to talk about dysfunctions. Okay, I'm not quite sure what dysfunction she's talking about, but I do think that sex and sexuality is definitely a lot more open now than it would have been 30 years ago. And I'm sure that some things that would have been considered, mental illnesses or I guess dysfunctions, as she said, are now just kind of considered, I don't know, fetishes, and there'll be whole communities dedicated to this kind of thing, and it's a lot more tolerated. So I think she's on the right track there. The biggest change in sex in the last 20 years has been that ordinary lay people have begun to write about their experiences and have begun to introduce the subjective element. Yes, although maybe she, of course, wouldn't realize the value of social media in that regard. But yeah, now thanks to social media, these kinds of discussions and people talking about their sex lives and stuff is pretty routine now. And you can just find all sorts of information. And of course, sharing of videos and photos and all sorts of other stuff that we won't get into. In 20 years, more people are going to have long periods of time where they are not in a marriage or other long-term sexual relationship. They should have options that do not depend on getting emotionally involved. I think the sex products industry will become important to people in monogamous marriage relationships and help keep those relationships together by an active interest in sexual possibilities. Okay, yeah, I guess. I mean, this kind of harks into the whole liberalization that's kind of occurred and the discussions that are occurring and use of internet and social media and so forth. I'm sure there's stuff that we just kind of take as routine now when we read about it in articles and things that back in the 80s would have been just like, whoa, you can't be talking about this sort of thing. So, yeah, I suppose, yeah. There are issues that barely have been uncovered or discussed during the recent so-called sexual revolution. Why does our culture limit the idea of what is sexually attractive? Why do we limit it to people who are young and pretty in a conventional way? How do we begin to change that so that the possibility of being a sexually assertive person is open to all of us who fall outside the bounds of conventional attractiveness? Okay, well, she was actually just meaning more of a, I guess, rhetorical question. But yes, this, I think, has happened. Again, I think social media and the internet have really played a role. in this idea of, hey, you don't have to be a model or a TV star and all of that, and to have a sexual life or to be considered desirable. And now you have whole communities that sort of especially like fat acceptance and this whole thing about not shaming people and stuff like that. And so all in all, I would assume that Miss Barbara here would probably be pretty happy with how things have progressed in the last 20, 30 years. It definitely seems to be going in the direction that she is mentioning. She doesn't make a lot of concrete predictions, but the overall view seemed to have been happening. Of course, she wouldn't have known that social media probably would have been the biggest part of that. But, all in all, if you had sat there in 1987 and read this, this would have been some good information about the direction the future would have probably headed. So yeah, I'll give this a 6. I'd say that was pretty good. So that's it for the article. There were a couple of others, and I looked at them, but there wasn't much there to discuss. Some of this was great. I've said it already. I'm pretty surprised at how well this worked out. Like how well many of the predictions were. So okay, some people were way off, but for the most part, it was more accurate than I thought it would be, and that's great. I wonder if there's any other kind of article out there where people like from 2020 are going to make predictions. Fortunately, there's no Omni Magazine anymore, but someone should really do that. Gather people together and start, getting their thoughts on what the future will be like in 20 or 30 years. Because it'll be great to do another video like this 20 or 30 years down the road, and we see how it all turned out. So thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed this reading of Omni Magazine's predictions for the future, and see you soon.